Hi, welcome to Insurance Reboot, the series that look at the interface between insurance and AI for businesses. What does insurance have to do with AI deployment? So let me go back to the Second World War, and Abraham Wald, a statistician, I believe at Columbia, was tasked to find a way to reinforce aircraft bombers so that they don't come back riddled with holes. And so what Wald concluded, against the common sense, is that the planes that had holes in those areas not observed in the returning planes were precisely the plane that did make it whole. And so if any reinforcement was needed, that was precisely where no hole appeared on the planes returning. A picture will make this look more clear. Going back to insurance, an insurance company will put up a policy or an endorsement expecting the client to come back and buy another policy. So drawing the parallel with Abraham Wald's work on survivor bias, you can say that the insurance policies, which are set up for companies that will come again and reiterate and renew their insurance policies over and over again, illustrate what is safe use of AI. And what is unsafe use of AI is precisely in the policy gaps where one policy cover finishes and another policy cover doesn't extend to that point. You have this in Uber, for instance, when a particular joins Uber, initially his personal insurance policy ended when, as soon as he picked up the phone or accept a client, that becomes commercial. His personal policy was no longer valid. But the policy provided by Uber or Lyft would actually only start when the client actually put a foot in the car. In between the two, if the driver got into any accident, all bets were off. And so studying the existing coverage for an AI product is a good way to think about how to implement AI in your own business. So today, in the next series, we're going to look at liabilities that occur in conjunction with AI that are not necessarily observed elsewhere. And the first one I want to do today is bias, data bias. An AI system is trained on data, and if that data is biased, then the bias will carry through. But there's more to that, because bias is also a statistical term, and it has to do with how you sample things, how do you represent things. So overrepresentation would be the case of survival bias of Abraham Wald. It's not always, but it's one of them, where the sampling is exclusively in one area and not in the danger zone. Underrepresentation, rural and mining areas do not have the same needs, legal and governmental needs, than big metropolis. On the other hand, the rural and mining districts are typically much less dense than urban. And so you potentially have a bias of how the global population is sampled. It might overrepresent the urban areas to the detriment of the commodity producing areas. Another example of underrepresenting is when this atmosphere is being sampled for the weather. We have satellite data, which is above the ground, very high level. We have punctual data at nearly meteorological stations on the ground. But in between the two, there's balloons and there's aircrafts. And that's pretty much it. Now, the later ones will only measure on a simple curve. They will not measure a whole area. So the data we have about the climate is on the ground, very far above the ground. In between is kind of a very sparse area. We don't really know what's going on. And so that can create bias and create false conclusions. Algorithmic bias. This is when an algorithm is made to search for something that is not supposed to, that is not actually designed to look for. So the example is in genetic algorithms, we have solutions or germs of solutions which we evolve over time, and we recombine them and we shift them, we mutate them if you want. And overall, the population will gradually converge to something that looks like a good solution. Sometimes it's not a good solution. Sometimes we can find a much, much better one somewhere else. And the question arises, why is that? And typically, well, one of the first things we look at is called early convergence, which is when the person training the algorithm has put too much importance on performance over exploration. And so you can see that your trajectory goes to the best local solution. You can improve from here, but if you are taking another path far diverse, you may actually find something that's much, much better here. Sensor bias. If you have a different accent when you speak English, you know very well that the bot at the other hand will not understand a word you're saying, whereas an English speaker might actually be able to follow. We don't have the same sensors, so the sensor may actually create a filter that actually excludes useful data. Cultural bias is another one, and we can go on. One example I'd like to share with you is in Quebec, there's a standard response like, how are you? Comment ça va? Pas pire. How do you do? Not worse. Now, not worse can be pas pire, which means, yeah, man, what could you, pas pire? I'm really feeling good. The only difference is the tone. That goes straight off the radar when you start training algorithm only by paper. And so these are examples of biases, and then I'll try to look at security risk in the next video. Take care, bye.